2021. We are now recording. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda as published.
I'll second that.
Does anyone have any additions or changes that they would like to make or amend that motion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of approving the agenda as stated, please recognize or indicate by saying aye.
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 Raise your hand. Anybody opposed or abstaining? Okay, thank you. We now have 10 minutes for public comment. If there's anyone in the public, whether online or in the audience here in person, that would like to share anything with us, now is your first opportunity. We'll again have a 10-minute public comment at the end of the meeting. I'm not seeing any indicators from the public here. Dawn, I'm not seeing anything online, are you? Okay. Great. Let's go to our agenda and take 2 minutes to review the board norms.
Haven't changed.
Haven't changed. I guess I'll go ahead and note too, and these are norms that we've set. Looks like revised in 2021. It's been a few years, so if anybody at any time feels like we want to revise this, we can add this to our work plan and add to it. Let's move on to the consent agenda.
I move the consent agenda.
Can I get a second?
Second?
Any changes, amendments, or notes? Comments, questions, discussion? Great, seeing none, go ahead and call it to a vote. All in favor of approving the agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? Okay, the ayes have it. Item 6, we have a discussion action of a tuition request. Brandy, you want to give us
Sure.
a quick?
Yeah, so we have a request from a family who resided in the Meadowy School District at the beginning of this year, and they have 7 through 12 school choice. Their child attended Long Trail School for 7th grade, and the beginning of 8th grade this year. They moved in October from Meadowy Town to a Taconic and Greentown, and they want their child to continue on at Long Trail, and they're requesting that the board pay tuition for them to attend, paying tuition out of their pocket. Mom identified as, financial hardship and challenging for them to do, and they are asking the board to pay so he can stay there. Mom was going to be at this meeting but had a conflict and asked us to proceed with considering her request. Melanie and I met with Mom to discuss her request and let her know that, how the board has handled this historically, that they have not ever approved a request like this in the past, and that we did not believe it was likely that you would. She heard that, understood that, and still wanted us to come so that she knew that she had made this attempt. So, yeah.
We're talking about tuition for when?
For when they became residents of Taconic and Green through the end of this school year. So probably looking at approximately $16,000, roughly.
Was there any significant circumstance that forced them to move?
No.
Okay.
No. They sold their home. They, I believe, had put it on the market, sold their home, and moved here.
We have spent an awful lot of time listening to some extraordinarily complicated stories about why we should approve this kind of request. The difficulty is that we have established a fair precedent with respect to people voluntarily choosing to leave our schools. And in the case of Meadowy, that volunteering, she could have taken advantage of Manchester or one of the other schools within our system. It seems to me that every time we hear one of these cases, it bothers me that we can't say yes because of the precedent that would be established. In my humble opinion, because the school, Long Trail, that she's going to, has the capacity to give scholarships in an emergency or financial situation that didn't exist prior to this, it seems to me that the most appropriate place for her to make her financial appeal is Long Trail. I do not believe that this case and all of the others that we've discussed warrant a change in the precedents that we've established.
Would you like to go ahead and make a motion?
I would move that we approve the motion, the paying of the tuition.
Just to get it on the table, you're saying?
To get it on the table, yes.
Yes,
I'll second that.
Okay,
also to get it on the table.
further discussion.
Have we made any payments to date to Long Trail?
No.
Any other questions?
I have a question, but
Yeah.
I'm sorry, was somebody else speaking?
No, go ahead, Kelsey.
Maybe this isn't the most appropriate question right now, but I thought the policy committee was gonna be meeting about this.
Yes.
Do we have an update or?
I think it still is, they just haven't met yet.
We,
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Right.
we
There's
did,
no policy.
we did meet.
Oh, okay.
We did pass by the superintendent potential language that might be imposed, because any policies that we might have adopted would not apply to the November meeting which she was supposed to come to. And the superintendent had some questions about the language with respect to the guardrails that would place substantial limitations on agreeing to these kinds of requests. And given the fact that she was unable to come, we never proposed the proposed policy language. And it was sent back to us to review in greater detail. And in November, the policy committee was reconstituted. Rogan was added, and it is among 4 or 5 issues that have to be discussed when we can meet.
Okay.
Jeff, you wanna say something quick?
Just to augment a little bit, that was in, I think, December. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so it was only 2 weeks ago that the policy committee was given that charge. Haven't had an opportunity to meet yet, but Dick, we were talking today, the thought was maybe the policy committee will be meeting after the 1st, and it'd be one of the issues that we'll be tackling when we meet after the 1st.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm just curious if there's any circumstance in which the board would accept this request, or a request similar.
Yeah, I think, and my comment I was just making before you asked that great question, and I think some guidance for the policy committee, which that wasn't the last meeting, I'd be happy to join too if you need another member. Only
Great.
instance I'd be willing to consider such an ask would be if there was an extreme circumstance that forced the family to move, you know, home burned down, natural disaster, severe financial hardship. There's a big difference to me between that and a voluntary move, and so if there is a, that's when I think it's appropriate to come to the board for discussion. If there is an involuntary move on the family. If there's a voluntary move, then I will never consider it. I think that's fair to say.
I'm gonna agree with John. When we first got this request back in November or October, I had emailed Randy just some questions about understanding like tuition and how much we'd have to pay and whatnot. And I'm assuming everybody knows, but like seeing as how this is my first year on the board, I didn't realize that we wouldn't get that money for the student if they came here. So it's already. Do you want to explain that a little bit more? But like, when they transfer in after the start of the new year, we don't get any more money.
Correct.
So
From the state.
from the state,
Yeah.
and so we would be taking out of.
Yeah, double.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, that wasn't explained well. Sorry.
I don't know if this matters with this conversation, but just to kind of follow up on what John said, there's already state statute and federal law that protects against situations like what you described that sort of direct our actions in a situation like that essentially protects our kids and for stability under hardship times.
Yeah.
So it really wouldn't be ultimately left to me or to you. We would be following either state or federal guidelines on that. So just so you know that those protections are in place.
So the fact that it comes to us kind of automatically triggers that this is not a hardship scenario.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Not as described by John.
As
right now.
and or by law.
In every one
Right.
of those scenarios, there's protections in place.
Okay.
There
Thank
might
you.
be more. I know you just were giving examples.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
felt like I wanted to just
No,
share
I
that.
didn't know that. Thank you.
Share that with the board.
Okay.
Is there anything new to be said, or do we want to? Yeah.
You ready?
I wondered, since John was not at the last meeting and was listed as a possible person, I think, Ben, you were also not at the December 2nd meeting.
Who was?
Oh, you were there.
Yep.
Then there was somebody else who was,
Jessica.
Jessica. And we'd mentioned both of them as possible members. Since John just volunteered, could John be included in the
Why don't we just do
membership without
I don't-
You can change
bias?
the agenda.
Or do
I
we
think
have
that the chair
I
can
don't think we
appoint.
need to do that. Right. I think I can just appoint you.
Sounds good.
Consider yourself appointed.
Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. Welcome to the policy committee, John. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and call this to a vote. All those in favor of approving the tuition request, please indicate by saying aye or raising your hand. Anyone opposed, please indicate by raising your hand. And that's Alex has raised his hand. I think Lindsay is also. Anyone abstaining? No, okay, the motion is denied.
Is that unanimous?
Thank you, that was unanimous, thank you for that discussion. On to executive limitations in our draft FY27 budget.
Okay, so we've presented at the last meeting, sort of a status quo budget, and so in this version you have some comparisons. So I'll turn it over to Sue and we'll walk through kind of what you're looking at here, and then open it up for discussion. Is it better for you to kind of work through the whole thing, or do you want people jumping in at the time?
I think people should jump in. I've given you, I'll give you a brief summary, okay? I've given you sort of the laundry list of things that we've changed. You saw the last draft, what would have been status quo if we had kept operating the way we currently operate. And then we've added to that another column to show you what our proposed budget is under reorganization for next year. We've got a variance column in there to show you where the changes are, and I've given you a little summary because obviously the bulk of that is staff, right? So I've got the list for you of positions that are decreasing, positions that are increasing, and where that's taking place.
Is this where we jump in?
You can jump in right now, Jeff.
I'm just wondering, are we still on page 6?
We're anywhere you want to be.
I can jump in anywhere.
Please don't.
Yeah, I'm talking about
Yeah.
the packet, page 6 and 7, but yeah.
You should have gone through the whole thing first. You never let people jump in.
I gave her
That's
the
why the
opportunity.
legislature never gets anything done.
I like it, I like the back and forth.
All right, so on page 6,
Yes.
in the middle of the page, it says there's gonna be $125,000 included in the
Yes.
budget for planning and implementation and reorganization.
Correct.
Monies to be used by teachers and administration. So, can you give me a little better idea of what exactly that's for?
Yep.
And where it appears in the budget?
Yep, so there's 2 places it's gonna appear in the budget. The first place, you're going to see it on packet page 16. You see line 182, you're gonna see that big jump there on teacher stipends. And we're going from 99.6 pre-reorg to 154. So there's a chunk of money in there.
Which line number is that?
182.
Did I say the wrong number?
Oh,
Forgive
No,
me
you're
if I
still looking
did.
at 182, and that's what we're looking
182.
for.
Okay. So that is for, Randy can speak more to this, but that is in order to provide stipends to teachers who are going to be doing planning, right? There's probably gonna be tons of work happening this summer, I would imagine, around people planning for reorganization, and teachers are a big part of that. And so we wanna make sure there's enough money in the budget for principals to be able to work with their teachers and assign that work over the summer for those who are interested in doing it.
So stipends for the teachers who work a day or 2 or 3 in the summer
Right,
on a per diem basis.
Yep.
That is compensation, but it's not part of their,
not part of their
Pay.
teaching contract, correct, because
Right.
it's outside of their 186-day teaching contract.
okay.
Correct. And we always have, as you can see, there's a big number in there for stipends for the teachers. The
Right.
principals have teachers do lots of things during the year that is beyond their contractual
Right.
time. This is just an increase to that. And so that's not something that we would expect to continue on an annual basis, because there's planning that's gonna go into this.
It's a one-time. And then there's administrative.
Yeah, so on the administrative side, there's obviously some additional work for principals to be doing with respect to reorganization,
Aren't they just
but,
supposed to do it as
well,
administrative?
I can let Randy speak more to that, but there's also a
we have
half-time
principals here.
administrative position that's included for mentoring and having, providing principal support, but I can let Randy speak more to that.
What line is that though, that one?
Sure. That's gonna be built into the administrative salary line, so 302.
Thank you.
You wanna add on to that?
I don't know, I didn't see.
Are you good with that, Jeff?
Yes.
This is the best of my ability of what I can
You did a
explain.
heck of a job. Randy, you don't want to get the rationale, huh?
That would be on packet page 18.
19.
19? 19, sorry.
How much is that one? How's
Uh,
what's the breakdown between the two?
yeah, so roughly, I wanna say that, you're looking at about 50 for the teachers and about 75 at the admin side.
It's interesting.
That's the halftime position for the admin side of things.
Yeah, so part of that is not, a stipend for, did you have it in here? Do you have it listed? I know you haven't talked about it. I just wanna, so.
No, it's not stipends, it's the halftime position,
Yeah,
basically. Yeah.
right, which is not what Jeff is thinking about right now. So the admin side of it is I am providing some coaching for leaders through this transition
Okay.
from the summer through the fall, so that I've got enough support to support the entire system
Yep.
through the transition in the valley. I wanna make sure that as new teams are coming in play, the teachers are gonna be looking at, they're gonna be creating leadership teams, PBIS teams, looking at curriculum planning and organization, new positions and sort of the flow of the buildings. I wanna make sure we've got enough support, so I'm hiring essentially a coach to get us through the first 6 months, that then will fade. So
An in-house
that's where
coach
that
or somebody
increases administrative.
In-house coach or someone from the outside?
In-house coach who knows our system and knows our,
And that's coming out of the principal's salary line, or?
It's in the administrative
Correct.
section, right, so that,
Well, it's not a stipend, though, so that'll be.
no, it's like a half-time position. Because
Is it
as
only
Randy
for
said,
fall?
it's 6 months.
Correct.
But
Six
is that,
months.
I'm sorry, is that what that is? Only? And there's
yes.
nothing else for the other principals?
There are small stipends,
Okay,
yes,
just curious, but it's all
Yeah.
coming out of that line?
yes, that
But the
section,
prince,
yes.
But, you know, exclusive of that position, the principal line would have actually decreased
Correct.
because of the restructuring.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, 100%.
This is about transition, Dick?
Yeah, it is. I'm assuming that since there will be a middle school operation here at Floodbrook, that any curricular and other changes that occur in the valley will also, the teachers here at the middle school level will be included in that transition, as well as the elementary changes that are being implemented.
Any changes, for sure, it's always system-wide. So
Right.
yes.
So do you want to continue with highlights, and maybe you can highlight it in chunks, and, because I think if we jump all over too much, I will
Yeah,
lose
I
my
mean-
space, and the public will have a hard time following
I
along.
think maybe, in thinking about sort of the best way to talk about the highlights, maybe we just walk through the change column.
Great,
Okay, I think that's the best way to do it.
okay.
And still jump in or not?
You can still jump in,
No.
Joe. No, you have to listen to Melanie. If she says no, no.
She won't call on.
Let's do expenditures and start on page 14. So you're seeing a change, rows 90 through 94. You're seeing a change in paraeducator support, so we're increasing some paraeducator support in the pre-K program. You already saw in the last draft, we have included classroom teacher and.
Could you start
What
again,
page,
please?
what page?
Back to page 14.
We're all catching up.
I'm sorry.
You're fine, so thank you.
Line 90, I'm on paraeducators. So you already saw in the pre-reorganization draft, we talked about adding a pre-K teacher, pre-K paraeducators here at the Floodwood School, new next year. So that's included obviously in both budgets. But with the move from one pre-K classroom from Courier to Manchester site, we need a little additional para support time because of the compliance regs on having more than one person in the classroom with those kids at all times. So, and they have to have a certain level of breaks. So there have to be enough support staff to accommodate that. So we're adding like half-time para there at that program. So that's the increase to paraeducators.
So how many, sorry,
Go ahead.
how many, seats are we expanding in the pre-K program across the district?
10 here.
Here.
10?
10
Okay.
at Floodbrook, if we can get the approval to open
So
it.
we're not, so Manchester has what, 20 right now?
They will have 3 classrooms,
They have
so there'll be
threes.
30 seats in Manchester.
And that's no different than what we have now between Manchester and Courier,
Okay,
correct?
so we're adding 10, okay. So
To that building, but
Yeah,
same for the
so the
program.
transfer of the program requires a little bit of additional support.
Okay.
Thank
Alright,
you.
and that accounts for the, I think it was 220,000 increase in expenditures.
That's
Okay,
here.
yeah, right.
That,
That's what I thought.
that, yeah,
So am I understanding correctly that by consolidating our pre-K, it's costing us more?
It
We're
is in the
adding
budget, but the needs are the same. But at Courier, the way that they covered for that was by pulling from their pre-K, their K to 5 program and pulling people from there. That worked there because they were so small, but the regs are changing in January, asking our K to 5 staff at MEMS with a larger program to figure out how to make that work adds a level of complexity and vulnerability that I'm not willing to take. The regs are changing in a way that is really not favorable for a public system in general. So I want that staff to be able to work in that program, cover what it is, be able to meet all of the needs, and not have to be pulling from the K-5 model.
there's a
And
level,
that program is pricier because it's, less, we're getting reimbursed less from the state for pre-K program.
there is in the weighted membership, yes, there is a reduction to their count, so it's weighted down instead of up on pre-K, so yes. And it costs more sort of on a per student basis, just because you only have so many kids in that classroom, right? You have to have the teacher, the para, and that extra support, and you can only have those 10 students. So it is pricier in that sense. When Brandy's talking about regulations, the amount of training that pre-K staff have to take in order to be allowed to work in that program is extensive and going to be greater. So, at Courier, where they may be able to have a couple of other people who are also trained to work in that program and they could pull, that may not be the case in the larger buildings. And it is better to have, that sort of dedicated staff to work in that program.
About pre-K?
Yes.
Yep.
On pre-K up here, the new program, in the past and currently, I guess, don't we pay a sum of money to a local private
Yes.
daycare?
Yes,
Will that continue?
yes.
Why would that continue? Because we don't do that down in Manchester, do we?
Yes, we do. We do it across.
You pay North Shore School?
Yep.
They do have kids at
We
a
have
ton
many,
of
many settings.
private and public,
How is that?
10
some-
hours. It's not the full pay.
Right, I
20.
understand,
Well,
10
you
hours.
guys pay 20,
yeah,
yeah.
you
Yeah,
pay
pay 20, okay. Oh, right, because we voted that a
Yep.
few years back.
Mhm.
Right,
Right.
okay.
Okay.
That's lines 10,
And that's
8,
per,
and 9.
per student, or, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, for
So
those 10
if
hours.
students migrate from there to here, our
Then we wouldn't
payment-
be paying that,
Right,
right,
okay.
if they weren't in the program, if they were in our program.
I got you, thank you.
Just curious, the change in regs, was that wasn't a change in law, or was that just a change from, hey, where did it come from?
I don't
The
know.
pre-K?
Department of Children and Family
Yeah,
Services.
DCF?
it's the
Early
state.
education.
It's probably, yeah, I don't know exactly
That
where
could
the
be part of
changes
the
came
old
from.
problem of, for a long time,
Sure.
It
education
still
and
is.
DCF.
It is,
Well,
it's a terrible problem.
You still got the two overlapping and fighting.
It's still
Yeah.
a very problematic
Continues to get worse
system.
instead of better,
Mhm.
yeah.
Just as a note to those of our board members who are in contact with our legislators, this would have been a great thing to know and say last night when we met with them, and still a good thing to bring up with them as we're talking about issues with the formula.
Yes,
And like, if we're getting paid less per pre-K, but it's costing us more because of the regs they're putting in, it's like, these two things don't work.
yeah.
This is something that's been brought up for the last 15 years, I think. Even when I was a rep, we tried to do something about it and couldn't even get a meeting together. But yeah, it's an issue, and the state seems to be unwilling to do anything about it. But I think we could continue to try.
If they're revising the formula, it seems like an opportune moment at least to bring it up.
Go ahead, Sue.
Okay,
Thank you.
so we're gonna move to packet page 15. And so now we're talking about the K-8 program. First up is classroom teachers. And that change that you see is a reduction of 2.4 classroom teachers. This is all happening through attrition or change in positions. There's no reduction in staff here with respect to individuals. And so that's where that 260 comes from.
Sue, when you say no reduction in staff here, are you saying overall for the system, or are you saying
In classroom teachers.
compared to the pre-org and reorg?
It's a reduction of 2.4 positions, but when we talk about people, we don't expect to have any rifts associated with classroom teachers.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm just, so in
Yeah.
general, when you're talking about this, you're talking about the comparison,
Yes,
or
I'm
you're
talking about the
Okay.
comparison, yes,
Okay, great.
absolutely.
And anything, and also because I want to make sure I'm not doing this wrong, anything in brackets that is costing us more, and anything that's not is savings.
Correct.
Okay, great,
Correct.
thank you.
Yes. So Unified
I'm trying to
Arts, so we are seeing the savings in Unified Arts, and here we do have some changes, right? So we have an increase, all right, of a .4 art teacher. And that is because we have 2 part-time positions, and we want to make this 1 full-time position, and so that will be an increase from a .4 to a 1.0. We have added a health teacher. Again, when we say adds, this is to accommodate the programming that Randy is recommending for the reorganization. We have a reduction of 1 PE teacher, and we have a reduction of 1 music teacher. So there's a little bit of back and forth going on in that category, and overall, it is a savings of $107,000. Interventions,
Savings of what, I'm sorry?
$107,000.
That's
This is on
meaning
line
you-
132.
Between the pre-org and the.
Yes,
reorg.
Right,
Yeah.
but not compared to last year's budget.
Correct, we're not looking at that. Right now, we're just talking about the difference between sort of what we presented last time, which is how
Right.
would we be operating, and how we're gonna be operating differently with reorganization.
Right. So those are all relevant.
Go ahead,
I
Chris.
just, I mean, this is one of those places that people have specifically been asking us about in terms of opportunities for students through consolidation is enhanced access to these types of programs. So I just want to be clear that, and I mean, I'm understanding it as a board member, but I think this is a thing that we need to communicate, that even though we're seeing a reduction in expense and in teacher numbers, we're expecting to still be able to offer more robust programming for students.
Correct. And I emailed the board yesterday, just Sue and I missed as this was going out at the end of last week, that I would like to add in a point for tech position for the middle school to be able to really provide podcasting, coding, like web design, that kind of stuff for our kids. And I think that that's an important piece to make sure that we can put in place for our middle schoolers. And we've got this world language position that remains vacant now. We've heard from some parents, as you know, about world language at the elementary level. I do not, my recommendation to the board is not to expand that programming right now. We've got an unfilled position. I'd like us to fill that. If we happen to have 2 rock star candidates, then I would come back to you and say, hey, we've got 2. I'm recommending that we overspend the budget in this line and bring this person on if we're in a place financially to be able to do that. The idea of adding positions that will likely remain unfilled does not feel like a responsible burden to put on taxpayers right now, given the pattern that we've seen. And so, the whole model is really being designed in a very a stable and solid way. Tomorrow I'll send the board, I'm gonna be communicating with teachers and staff tomorrow about assignments, and it feels really, really good to be looking at the way that the buildings are staffed, to feel like everybody has access to really stable, robust programming, and there's consistency across all of our buildings about what kids are able to access. So, my recommendation is, let's make sure we get everybody this, equal access to the same opportunities, see where we are operationally, and next year, if there's, depending on what's filled, what's not filled, what's going on with the budget, if we decide that we want to start expanding programming beyond what we've got, because there's a need, we can do it then. I feel good about what we're proposing. It's going to be expanding for many, many kids within our system, and certainly not taking away anything the kids currently have.
The point for tech, was it a tech? Is that gonna be, and maybe this is too nitty gritty, and if it is, like, just let me know, is that gonna be split between Floodbrook and the middle, like
It'll be down at the middle school, but we'll be working here
so we do provide programming here
Yes,
too? Okay, I
yes.
just wanna clarify, make
Yep.
sure.
Very briefly, following up on
I think we're.
Ben's, last night we spent at the BRSU meeting a number of times pointing to the fact that the public wants to know a lot of stuff. And the issue that Ben was talking about, I think, is very important, that we show where costs are increasing to provide more robust programming, but also when costs are decreasing and we're saving money, to point that out to the people. That's particularly important this year, because we've got to establish credibility long before we get to the bond vote.
I just want some clarification for myself on language arts. You're saying that we're not gonna budget for it because most likely it'll go unfilled? Is that what you were saying?
You mean world language?
World
A
language,
world
sorry.
language position?
Sorry.
that I would not be recommending.
You still have one person in the
There's
budget.
two.
We have 2 people in the budget, one of those is unfilled, so we're gonna keep trying to fill that position. My recommendation is not to expand programming, to the level that people were requesting at the elementary level through communication to the board, because you'd be looking at a significant increase, and I really need to analyze the impact of that on elementary core academics, and that would, you'd be ultimately looking at 3 more positions that I don't think would be filled, and we'd be asking taxpayers to pay for those. Taxes would be increased, and we wouldn't even be having somebody to provide the programming.
Right, so,
So that's
when we were talking about pre-K, specifically from, FY '26, we're $13,000 less than what was originally budgeted, is that because of staffing? I guess where I'm going is,
I don't understand the question.
so pre-K for FY '26, the budget was $92,878.
What
But-
line are you on?
Sorry,
Oh,
91.
Paras.
Oh, I see, yes. Mhm.
So is that for staffing shortages that we fell significantly short?
No, we did have somebody resign at the beginning of the year, and so then they filled that, so that's part of it. But the other part of it with a change like that is, it sort of depends on who's being put in that assignment. So the person that resigned was a long-time employee, the person that filled it is not, right? So
Yep.
there's gonna be changes in costs just associated to movement of who the employee is.
Okay, I was just curious because it seems like we're pushing the pre-K, budgeting quite a bit for it in the transition. Yeah, I was curious if it was because we were falling short, just like in world language.
Yeah, there's no unfilled positions.
Especially because we're losing money on the pre-K
Yeah.
through the state, and everybody seems to really be clamoring, myself included, for more world language opportunity.
There's no unfilled positions in pre-K right now, so from that
Okay.
comparison point, that it's not really comparable.
I
but
just saw the number,
Yep,
the difference,
absolutely.
and I just wanted to make
It
sure.
is because we're adding a whole new classroom, and I think that's big in and of itself, because those are positions that did not exist before, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, I'm just gonna hop into what Randy was talking about with, the tech position. So that didn't make it into this draft, but the intention is to include it in the next draft, so it will be added in as a point for position, just so that you're all aware.
Where's that now? I'm sorry.
It's not.
It's
not
not
in
here.
I understand, but where would it
It
be?
will be added to Unified Arts,
Gotcha, thank you.
yes.
No, wait, oh, go ahead, John.
I'm sorry if I'm being dense here, is the reorg budget,
Mhm.
is that what we can think of if the bond vote fails? Or if that, is this budget or the pre-org budget, I should say, pre-reorg?
Pre-reorg.
How does the budget change if the bond vote fails? Does it change at all?
No,
No, okay.
no, the reorg budget is really the way we're reorganizing
it's-
with the school closures.
For this
All right.
coming year.
So,
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think a headline here between the pre-org and the reorg is that, you have expanded programming, it sounds like, with $500,000 less, based on, of expenditures.
I think there's some expanded programming, but I think more than that is more equitable continuity of services across all schools, right, Randy?
Yeah, it's definitely both, right? Within the system, there's expanded programming, but also for many, many kids, there's a whole lot more that they're having access to that they didn't before, that was within our system for other students.
For, like Sunderland, I know, had a part-timers career,
Part-time
right?
everything.
Part-time everything,
Yeah.
right, so now,
Yeah.
And s-
now they have access to
Courier,
that, as this
even
is what we're
Dorset,
talking
Every day.
about.
Same people.
Yeah.
everyone except for Floodbrook and Manchester students will have access to services, resources, programming they
Didn't have.
have not had.
The change between the pre-org and the reorg look, really good, but I have some questions about the increases from FY '26 to now, and I can save those till later, 'cause I think I'm missing some of the math there.
Well, I think that's probably sort of what was included in the last draft, right? And we can go back to that, absolutely. You want me to keep going?
You mean from 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
when you addressed the changes?
Yeah, between
Right.
FY '26 and FY '27,
Right,
before
okay.
we started talking about reorganization.
Right, we
Right.
sort of
John
did
wasn't
it
here.
in these
Yeah.
two
Gotcha.
steps so that
John
it
was
was,
absent from school.
Yeah.
made
Right.
sense to,
I have a quick question, can I go
I
back
like
to the
the
pre-K?
minutes.
I just wanna make sure, I know, we're talking about adding 30 seats at MEMS, 30, 10, yeah, 30.
10.
Cause, no, but
It
10
was
each.
20.
The
20
transfer
now,
of,
And then you're adding 10, so there'd
Right.
be 30 seats, right?
correct. So-
I just wanna make sure, especially if we have to hire a new, like, are we gonna be able to fill the majority of those seats? Because I know at times it's not completely full.
We're moving courier students, we're
Yes.
moving the courier program
Yes,
to Manchester.
yes.
and it is
So
usually full.
Those
Okay.
students will be coming. I think, I will tell you that it's so interesting, I feel sometimes like I anticipate what we're gonna talk about and then it doesn't go. Like, I'm surprised we're not talking about a Floodbrook pre-K program. Like, I'm just surprised, I shouldn't be, I guess.
Why? They've needed one for years.
But I think that understanding, and talking through, well, the people have said that we needed one, but there wasn't really evidence by the need when you go through what there is in the state. And we're still not 100% sure that we will get approval. So we are hoping, all the preliminary work we have indicates that there is a need up here from our perspective, but we're not the ones who get to decide that ultimately. And in talking to families, it seems as if there are families with 3-year-olds who are interested in coming up, but that is obviously an additional expense to the budget, so,
You're saying the pre-K program at Floodbrook is brand new?
Right,
yes.
Yes.
Right,
Right.
'cause
Those
historic-
And that
Historic
is
seats.
one of the primary cost drivers of this budget.
Right.
So, like I said, just for me,
Yeah.
it's just interesting that, yeah, and that's okay, it's just surprising me, we're not talking.
Well, that, you know,
about the fact that we
I am
included it.
interested in the, you know, we've been talking about trying to do it, wanting to do it for a lot of years, and we couldn't because there was adequate capacity
Correct,
on the mountain.
correct.
Is there no longer adequate capacity, and is that how we got,
That, it looks as if we could get approval, so we're taking advantage of that, and we'll see.
and is that, you know, is there any pushback from other providers at this point?
No,
Are
I
they
haven't
supportive of, or do they not know?
they know, but I would say neutral, I haven't
Okay,
received
think-
support or concern.
I think as a parent, and maybe I'm wrong, but like, the program's only open to 4-year-olds, so it would open up preschools to more 3-year-olds. So more
Just we've
kids
had-
can, there's a
you know, we had a
space
big push
issue.
to try to establish one here and expand the one at MEMS. And this was, you know, 6 years ago or something. We ran into a total buzzsaw that we couldn't do that.
Right, yeah,
And that's why it's just sort of interesting that we're, you know,
yeah.
at that point, I think, you know, I think our families would have found it attractive to have another option, but, you know, understandably, there are other providers and you could be putting their businesses at risk. That seemed to be the
And that's the,
statewide.
right, that's the
issue.
mechanism of why the state it is the final approval in order to prevent that. They do not want a public program to put private providers out, so that's why
Is that through
the
AOEs
requirements
or?
are so, well, this one is the Child Development Division, so
Right.
it's the CDD.
Oh, okay.
Right,
Rowan,
it's
do you wanna follow
AOE,
up on this in a second?
CDD.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so we're moving forward because we feel at this point that we have the ducks are all in a line, is that?
In a row.
In a row, the ducks are in a row, that we could get approval,
Ducks are
so
queuing.
When would
we're
we
making the recommendation. I know, I'm terrible at
When-
whatever
When
those,
would we know?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Roman's got
Whenever
one
they-
more question, I think, for
If it doesn't get
pre-K,
approved,
and then we'll.
budget-wise, that opens up a lot of money that's been budgeted now.
It does.
World language, here we go.
Roman, if you
I-
have
I
any
don't
teachers
know.
that you know
Yeah,
that
yeah.
teach this,
You have to find a
Make
teacher.
some
It's the
phone
best.
Do you have somebody who'll teach?
just because of time, is this pre-K related also, or unified? Sure, go
You
for
ready
it.
to move on?
I guess, yeah.
Question I should have asked last week, I guess, but, the, health insurance, the increases to health benefits, do you use VHI rate increases? So next year is actually the smallest rate increase we've
We've
seen
had in a while,
in a long
7.3.
time. And
Yeah.
so, I think it's
Single digits.
7.2%.
7.3, yeah.
Yeehaw, single digit.
So I went through the whole budget and took out all the health benefits increases, and I saw, in my spreadsheet, it calculated $275,000, $275,000 in, health benefits increases. And, comparing, so that's like, accounts like 15, that's just in our line items, but those are baked in with, I imagine with SU assessments too, right? And also what, the tuition increases that we'll get from BBA, they're baked in there. Those are harder for us to suss out. I think it's, I would like to know, because I see that as kind of non-discretionary. There's nothing we can do about that. I would like to know, how much of our increases, because, that's what, $1.5 million more in spending for this budget, right? I think it's in, a couple million in expenditures, but with spending, I think it's $1.5 million. And so that 275,000, that's about 18% of that is increase in health benefits at the very least. So I imagine you add in those other factors, we're looking at, I don't know, is it 25-30% we can account for that increase in our spending on health insurance increases. That's something as a board member I'd want to know, but also we need communication to the voters. Yes,
Right.
we have increase in spending, but, what's driving that? Health insurance, of course, we all know health insurance, but how big of a piece is that? So I don't know how hard it is to suss that out and make it, and look at, the BRSU side too. And how much is health insurance driving our increases?
So, from a percentage basis, it's easy to talk about, but the harder part is certainly when you're talking about anything baked into other people's tuition rates, I would not try to come up with a number there,
Yeah.
right? So I think you'd have to separate out, which is sort of we do on the summary page, where we talk about programmatic numbers as a whole. We talk about special education, we talk about administration, we talk about the operating schools, and we talk about secondary. So if we were to just talk about our school operation, we talk about our pre-K to 8 programs, our facilities, and our staff. We could come up with, this is our increase, and this percentage of that increase is actually health insurance that we don't have any control over. With the caveat that there are change in elections, there are new staff that I have no idea what their health insurance is gonna be, so I plug in a placeholder number. It could be family, it could be nothing, and that is playing into those increases that you're calculating, because it's not dollar for dollar. It's not everybody who has a 2-person plan now is gonna have a 2-person plan next year. So it's really hard to have an exact number, but we can estimate it based on that 7.3%. And I can build that into BRSU assessments, but again, assessments are not just the BRSU budget went up $100,000 and 7.3% of this number is health insurance, because then it's also T&G has a higher share of that assessment. Do you see what I mean? So it's not as easy to just come up with a number, but I think it's a point we can share with the public.
I guess we figure out what the rough
Yeah.
estimate for personnel costs is health benefits.
Right, exactly.
And then look at our T&G employees and look at our BRSU employees,
Exactly.
and then.
Just a suggestion on that, it's just, we've, some of the numbers that, when you get rough talking on a statewide basis, and it tends to be, 80% of costs are people, that includes healthcare, and the share of health insurance costs of of schools around the state, I think, has over the past about 5 years increased from about 10% to close to 15%.
I was gonna say, I thought we were up closer in the teens.
Close
Yeah,
to
we're in the
15
teens,
now,
yeah.
but it was 10%
Yep.
not very many years ago. So just when you're trying to give rough numbers to have an idea, it's our total personnel costs continue to be in the order of 80%, but now 15% of our total costs are healthcare. So it's bumped up by about 5% of our total costs.
And
So that just gives sort of a ballpark.
looking at it from that
Different
approach, if you're comparing like FY '26 to FY '27, percentage of personnel in this year and this year comparison and percentage of healthcare from this year to this year it's probably a good way to do it. But you're right, bringing the BRSU budgets into it is a big part of it, because it's a big chunk of money. It's a big chunk of your budget, so sort of maybe doing an analysis of all of it together. So yeah, I'll think about that, John. I can share it with you before we do our FAQs.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily for me, I think it's important to communicate to voters,
Yep.
like, hey, we got an increase in spending of $1.5 million, you know, and a big piece of that is health insurance, which we
Yep.
have no control over, and try to get a rough estimate of what that is.
And standard salary increases.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
But the-
Yeah.
contractually
Right.
found.
But the tough
Or
thing is,
negotiate.
it's, you know, we tend to, it's very popular in the state for school boards to say we don't have any control over healthcare costs, and they are going up at a ridiculous rate. But still, it's sort of like, so it's gone up from 10% to 15% of our total expenditures. So it's, you know, it's eating into everything else, but it's not, you know, it hardly accounts for all of the increase in spending.
Yeah, but on the lobbying front, you know, as far as lobbying state legislature,
Yeah.
that's, you know, you can change governance structure as much as you want, consolidate governance
Right.
structure as much as you want, it's not gonna change.
Well,
Yeah,
the
what's
happy thing
the
is
real driver is,
they are kind of acting like they're serious this year about potentially making some changes to the negotiation rules that could help us.
You hold that for legislative update, maybe.
Yes.
And if you want to send me notes of what should go in the letter to our voters and the annual report on that, and pull that out, please feel free to do so. Because I think you're right, but, we have about, I don't know, 8 more pages of this budget to go through.
We haven't
So
gotten
if
very
I could
far.
ask you to continue moving forward.
All right, so intervention, you're seeing an increase here. And this is not an increase in positions or staff, it's actually in looking at the total intervention positions that are supporting P&G schools, it's actually a decline in FTE. The reason it's an
Sorry,
increase.
can you just give a line?
Right.
for,
Oh, I'm sorry,
133,
we're-
right after
yep.
Unified Arts.
thank
We're
you.
on the next section, yeah.
Well, I know, we keep jumping around.
That's totally fine. So it's actually a decline in FTE for services because we had that one sort of shared position that was classroom and intervention, and where we did not fill a position this year. So that's why we're seeing that 0.6 decline in overall services across T&G, but you're seeing an increase in cost because of the amount that we're now locally funding. The increase to local funding is due to reduction in grant spending. Okay, so we're going to fund less intervention positions from the grant for 2 reasons. One is because we aren't expecting to have as much grant money as we have right now to spend. We have carryover, we're trying to spend that carryover, so we added intervention positions in order to spend that carryover. If all things remained equal and we got our normal grant next year, which of course we don't know if that's gonna happen, but if it does, that's what we've budgeted for, and that's a reduction to intervention positions out of the grant budget. Along with that, Randy's recommending a sort of equitable services at each school, and that requires a certain level of locally funded positions in order to do that. So we're pulling away from grant spending for that reason as well. So that's why you're seeing the increase of the 216 for intervention. Does that make sense? I know it's a little taken from here and putting over there, so.
Wait, so we're actually reducing people, but we have so much less grant funds that
We
it's
didn't,
costing us more.
we didn't, no, well, we are, we're not reducing positions that are currently out there. In other words, people. The people that are providing services now are still gonna be providing intervention services. We're funding them locally versus funding them through the grant. We have one unfilled position right now, and we're obviously not gonna fill that. And we're shifting a shared classroom teacher position, intervention position to full intervention.
Okay.
which is what
Right,
it's
some of these
supposed
notes
to
are
be.
up in the top, right, in kind of your,
Yeah.
But it's really the significant increases because of grant funding
Right.
not being available.
Not being available,
But the need is still
and the
there.
decision to
Correct.
locally fund positions, so we're providing equitable services at each location. There are still 2 positions that will be grant funded. Good? Okay. The next section, social and emotional. I don't believe we have any changes in the social emotional program. Let's see, I do have a change in teaching salaries, though. Why do I have a change in teaching salaries in social emotional? Oh, let's see. Oh, yeah, okay, so this is also involves grant funding. So we had an increase in a school counselor position at one of our small schools, and that was partially federally funded in order to get the services to that school. We are reducing one school counselor position, and we're taking away that grant funding position. It's no longer needed, because again, we're having one school counselor in each school, and so there's that grant funding in that small school environment is no longer needed. So even though we are reducing one full position, because of the grant funding piece, that's where you're seeing that savings.
okay.
All right, regular education support. We're reducing some gen ed support staff positions, 3 of them. They are currently unfilled, and because of how we're gonna be providing services next year and the closure of those 2 schools, we no longer need those 3 positions. We did, however, add some additional wages in the system in order to accommodate before and after school support. So from a position standpoint, 3 positions are coming out of the budget. Again, they're not filled right now, so there's no cuts to people. But there is, you see that increase in support staff wages, well, it's a decrease, but it's not a decrease as in 3 positions. You would expect it to be higher if it was 3 positions, but because we wanna make sure we have enough hours in the budget to support people working a little extra in the morning, extra in the afternoon, we're gonna have different bus runs, different schedules. We wanna make sure everybody's covered, so we're putting a little bit of a buffer in there. Make sense? Okay. Middle school success, not a lot of changes there, but we are expecting to, with the new middle school, to be able to run that program a little differently, so we don't expect to need the same level of additional services for that program. The position itself is federally funded, the coordinator position, and we hope to fill it. It's in the federal budget. Under other instruction, line 182, teacher stipends, we talked about that earlier. So additional stipends to allow for support from teachers for planning. And slight change in substitutes. We had a switch of a full-time substitute position to a regular ed instructional support team position. And I think I've just adjusted the substitute line to accommodate. I'm not really sure why it's just $2,000. I don't really think there even should be a change in that line, so I'll take a look at that. And instructional material services, obviously we have 2 schools that are not gonna be operating. We still have teachers, we still have those students, but we don't have the schools. We would expect to see some level of savings for materials and supplies with the reduction, with the change to schools.
I have a
Ben,
question. And maybe this is sort of a mix of, I don't know whether it fit here or in enrichment later on, but just thinking about our efforts to sort of boost enrichment type programming and support, for the middle school here and for the emerging schools, and where are we putting extra funds in to support? I know we have reorganization fund line in there, and we have some teacher stipend lines, and we have some other places, but in terms of one of the ideas that's been floated is if we can't, are there subscriptions that we could get for students to educational services? Are there, are there other sort of media resources? Are there other things that we can do to enhance the student experience during this transition period in particular, and should we allocate funds to that? And I'm asking this a little bit because we focus so much, and I really appreciate this, and I know the taxpayers appreciate us focusing on sort of fiscal responsibility and tightening and being as cost efficient as we can. And I'm also looking at the realities of our budget increase as being very small, and the state tax letter coming out saying your taxes are gonna go up by 12%. You know, these things don't line up, and are we shortchanging our students, especially during this transition time, at the expense of students throughout the state? Because a small increase in our budget does not translate to that statewide, you know, like we're drops in the bucket relative to the, I mean, we're not drops in the bucket, but our district contributing to the overall ed budget, ed fund is you know, small, by adding $100,000 or whatever it might be for, you know, supporting programming or resources or materials, to boost up, you know, bringing all these kids into a new school. Like, it's like, how do we make it really nice? And how do we make the student experience up here and the family experience up here still feel like they're connected? And doing that, I just want to make sure that we're allocating, in being fiscally responsible, we're still allocating, and that we're not shy about allocating some extra funds to those areas.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, and that was a big part of the conversations when we were building budgets this fall, just to talk about exactly that. You know, as we built it, it was, you know, this is definitely the process of building these budgets. This particular budget this year has been more complex than ever before. I can't even imagine what Sue's brain looks like. I know what mine feels like. As we have tried to think about everything. Those details are things that we have talked about in the beginning of October as we were building the budget. So what we have in for enrichment is what principals have said, yeah, this is what we need. With that idea of after school clubs and opportunities and musicals and bands and, you know, the time, the resources for those enrichment types of experiences. Enrichment, we look at it, my understanding is it tends to be an area that we underspend.
Always.
Yeah, so we've got funds and we have continued to budget it in a way that I consider to be robust and available, and you know, we can't force people to stay after school or do extra things outside of their workday. We encourage it and we talk about it, and you know, talk about what we want to see, but sometimes we have people from out who are not employees of ours come in and do things, right? Which is a way for us to expand those, and is an area that we'll continue to develop with, you know, having a middle school and elementary kind of provides some different opportunities too. But I don't have concerns about what we have in here. We can certainly relook at it again. No problem at all, you know, going back to principals and asking, you know, if there's any, as they look at what their budget is now, as they look at spending, as they anticipate for next year. So if anything changes, I'll bring it to you for the January meeting with some changes.
I'm gonna just comment on that too, and I hear that, and I also feel like the Courier community and the Sunderland community are gonna hope that their taxes increase by the least amount possible, knowing that they've just now given up their community schools and are certainly not gonna wanna see extra spending going to boost to the valley and the mountain. Cause I can hear already the voices of they've just been wanting to get rid of us so they can take our money and take our kids. So I think it's a really hard little, it's tricky. It's a super tricky conversation that's going on right now.
Also, just one thing to note on the, one of the tough things with the December 1 letter is, in coming up with a, double-digit increase, is that, half of that increase is because they shoved extra money in last year to buy down the tax rate.
I know.
Right.
So this is, when we're looking at talking about like a 5% increase, and on a statewide basis, the education spending, that 12% increase in taxes is, reflecting like, 6.5% increase in education spending.
John, and then, Dick.
Yeah, I think this is a really vital budget year, and try to keep the faith of the voters. You're gonna have some people look at this and say, how are we spending $1.5 million more? And we have fewer kids. And I think we do, this budget, very well done. We zoom in and everything, it makes sense. I think what we need to get better at is, and this is where I'll challenge you a bit, Randy, is zooming out and telling what is the story of this budget? What is it, in 1 to 2 sentences, what is the mission of this budget? What is it gonna make us do better? Give this budget a little bit of sizzle here, and try to, and because I think each component piece is great, but big picture, how does it get us closer to our end goals, and maybe looking at those, and what is, I think really trying to communicate the story of this budget is going to be important, if that makes sense. Again, I don't want to knock the good work that's gone into it, but I'm trying to think from the voters' perspective. How are we spending increasing, and telling a really good story about this budget.
I'm gonna hold you just for a second. Lindsay has her hand up and hasn't.
Point out if there's just a way, from a lot of things that I've seen from the community, is people really do not understand how our budget is not what is the whole, like, their taxes are not paying our budget, so to speak. That there's a whole system to it. So when people hear 12%, they think their 12% increase is because of our budget and not necessarily the whole funding. I don't know if there's a way when there's the letter going out that we just explain that the increase in our budget is not the reason for the 12% increase in your taxes. Because I see it constantly that everyone is saying that increases because of our budget, and I'm not good with words to explain it to them, but I just don't know if there's a way we can put like a footnote or something in there.
Thank you, Lindsay. Noted when I write this letter.
I think that's, it's a good point, that we need to come up with an easier way, way to make it more understandable. Because if you look at, like this budget, we're talking about, expenses going up only 2.6%, but our revenues are down. And those expenses include spending some money to try to deal with the reorganization, but then we get some savings from the reorganization. It quickly starts to snowball into a complicated story, but trying to figure out a way to highlight the key points that people should, we need to make it more understandable.
It was just, and it wasn't meant to knock, but just, it does so many good things, how we distill it into.
It does, but it gets complicated very fast.
Increasing equity, increasing programming, I don't know what it is, but what's the thesis statement, the distillation of this?
John, we'll work on that. I wanna get through the budget. Now
Sorry.
Dick has had his hands up, multiple times.
All right,
But
so
I wanted to support Ben's point that we made lots of promises about enhanced programming, both before and after school, and opportunities. If we have the capacity to expand the budget, which was what Ben was saying, I think we go a long way towards delivering the promise that the reorganization that we visioned is substantial, improved educational and social opportunities for the students that we really embarked on sometimes a very painful series of choices. So I'd like to support Ben, and I suspect it wouldn't be very difficult to get a unanimous support out of the board for delivering as the best program that we possibly could, to use the words of Jeff Wilson, at a reasonable cost.
There you go. That's my word.
Folks, let's try to get through the rest of the budget so that we keep an eye on the time. If you have specific questions about where we are in the budget, we can dive into those, and then at the end, if you want to refer back to the sheet, Sue's got 2 pages worth of notes that kind of identify a lot of kind of what you're telling us now.
Yep, exactly.
If you want to
Yep.
review, and I appreciate this messaging conversation, like I said, there will be a letter going out to the public, right, in like a month. So let's maybe either hold that to the end of the meeting, or reach out to me, and I'm happy to work with whoever and take notes on that. But for this purpose, let's get through the budget aspect.
All right, packet page 17, I think, is where we left off. Oh, I will touch briefly on the bottom of packet page 16. We do have 2 teachers who have elected early retirement, so they are obviously in both budgets, but the last budget that you saw, there was only 1 teacher, we now have 2.
Okay.
So that is included in there.
Quick question.
Yes.
Can we have more teachers elect early retirement and this changes based on assignments?
The 15th is the deadline for the request,
so
so it has
Monday.
passed.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Thank you.
School nurse, the only change we have to the school nurse section is a reduction of a half-time regular ed position. That was an assistant position that was split between nurse and library, so you'll see that reduction down below as well. And that was to support a smaller school that didn't have a full-time nurse and a full-time librarian, and we no longer need that with the reorganization. So that position has been eliminated. That position is unfilled, remains unfilled, we haven't been able to fill it. The school librarian, we have, let's see, what do we have for school librarian? Randy, remind me. Oh, we have,
Decrease.
yeah, we have a decrease of a 0.4. And I'm sorry, I missed that on my list. That's 0.4 librarian decrease.
Except that I'm, the media.
The media sort of offsets that, but the media is not in here, so, yeah. And that would go under the Unified Arts section. So
Is
that,
that an unfilled position?
no, it is currently filled. So it will be a reduction.
But then I'm asking that the media part be added back in under Unified Arts. So she separates out Libre and Media from Unified Arts in the budget.
So is that,
Are we good? Kelsey?
I felt like there was more coming.
That's what I was waiting for.
I gotta think about that.
Okay.
It's still the reduction here, but we're gonna add the 0.4 in under.
So it's coming
Unified
back.
Arts.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So they're not like actually,
Well, yeah, it's not a people thing, it's a position, but yes.
Shifted.
It's a shift.
okay,
Right.
thank you, sorry.
Packet page 18, change to athletics. We do expect to have a need for some changes of athletic supplies, uniforms, et cetera, with the reorganization, so we've provided a small increase there. You see some changes in enrichment, it's a net zero change, but I'm just sort of changing things with respect to being able to divvy out funds by a school basis versus how we were doing it in the past based on kids. So this is each individual school roughly around the same enrollment. Each principal will sort of have the same pot of money to spend. And also reflective of sort of where the principals tend to prefer to spend their funds. And as Randy said before, we don't usually spend all of our enrichment money. There's usually a lot of money left there. I think it may be difficult right now to say throw a chunk of money in the budget with the anticipation of the hope to spend it, but the sort of talking about what that might look like over the course of the year for reorganization, I think it's usually have the ability to find those funds for principals when they're looking for something. But it's a matter of what would they be looking for, which I don't think we know right now.
And I think just to make a point, I've been talking to Pat Whalen, who's the athletic director for Manchester Dorset, about expanding athletic offerings, and one of the things that we're looking at all the possibilities as so for instance, we're starting a wrestling club and seeing if there's interest in potentially then starting a team. And I said, I think these are really good opportunities for us to bring our middle school kids together. So let's look at whether if there's interest from kids from Floodbrook coming down to be a part of this club, or for a team, let's really start taking advantage of those. And so looking at expanded offerings in high school and how we, might be, they've talked about volleyball. There's a real interest in a lot of our middle schoolers in volleyball. So starting to really provide some of those opportunities, even between middle school students, between the mountain and the valley, as we're expanding our programming.
All right, packet page 19. We do expect to be able to reduce, would hope to see a reduction in our insurance with 2 buildings no longer being part of the equation with respect to the share of property insurance. So I've got a reduction there. School administration we touched upon. We do have, you're seeing that increase simply because of that halftime position that's included in the budget. And we also hired a new principal, right? So there are adjustments to wages for all of those things, but we do expect to see that halftime position that's included go away in the future, so in future years. Administrative staff, this is just a shift based on what we expect to see for administrative staffing. There's no change in the number of positions per se, but the types of positions, whether we no longer need as many staff support positions not covered under the contract, because we don't need as many assistant to principal positions as we had before. So we've done some shifting with respect to what these positions will be versus what they are now, but they're still the same number of positions. And then, I've got some estimated savings in, just again, due to school closure, you're gonna expect to see things like telephone go down, office supplies go down, small adjustments there as needed. Special ed assessment, so both the general assessment and special ed assessments that are in here right now are based on the BRSU budgets that were approved last night. You're seeing a change in the special ed assessment from pre-reorg to reorg simply because there were a couple changes that we made to the special ed budget due to the reorganization. So I thought it was important that you saw that there would be a small increase in cost due to that, but I also want to point out that we did reduce some T&G positions that were transferred over to the special education budget with respect to support staff. That particular item is not a reorg thing, but it is a shift from one budget to another. Operations. So what are we doing with operations? We are eliminating one facility lead, facility manager, closing 2 schools, only eliminating 1 facility position. And that is due to attrition. That individual is resigning, so there's, again, no loss of a job for a person. Transportation is going up for obvious reasons. We spent a lot of time talking about transportation. It needs to not have the bus routes be too long. This year, Derek had added a halftime route, basically a PM route. He wants to make that AM, PM, and then add another driver. So budget to budget, it's a 2-person shift, but between reorg and reorg, it's 1.5 positions. Let's see. I've made some adjustments to facilities based on the closure of the schools. And those numbers I'm taking right off what we would typically spend at those 2 schools. We'll see where they pan out next year, but I can't imagine that 112 is going to be far off the mark. Packet page 22, really small change in food service. We made a big shift in food service program this year. If you remember, we stopped cooking and preparing meals at Courier. They're now prepared at Manchester this year and delivered to Courier to provide food service there in the same manner that we've done Sunderland for many years. So we don't really need to do a lot of shift to staffing because we already made some reductions this year for food service staff. All right, well, that's it for your K-8 budget.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Go ahead,
Jeff.
This is actually in the warrant articles and has to do with the buildings and ground reserve transfer. We've traditionally done $350,000 for a number of years. And I think that's a good policy, it has been, but things are changing to some degree now. We have 2 less buildings that we're looking at starting in FY27. We have the potential of a bond issue, which may involve wrapping some costs that normally would be paid to the reserve fund into the bond. And we have $4.7 million in the reserve fund now. So I think that begs the question, do we need to do $350,000 at this point in time?
That's a good question. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think one of the things we talked about at the last board meeting was finalizing conversations on operations with respect to bus replacement and building work. What is the 10-year plan for the projects that need to be done? And I would agree with you that when we think about the buildings as they stand right now, what are the projects that need to be done? All of that may go away when we think about doing a renovation, right, in any of our buildings.
Correct.
If that's what we do.
The only problem with reducing it or eliminating it is how do you get it back in the future, because you create this valley that you have to fill somehow.
That's exactly
this
right.
trench.
That's exactly right. Like we
But anyway,
have,
I'll raise that so you guys can contemplate that tonight at 1, 2 in the morning when you wake up.
but on the other hand, if you think about what does that do to our tax rate? It's
Minimal, I
a little over a
understand.
penny, right?
Or it could be part of a trend in the building. Every little bit helps. But anyway, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
I guess I would speak in favor of that as well. I mean, it does seem to make sense looking out if we are gonna go for a bond vote, and that's part of what we include in the plan for the bond, is that it's gonna include renovations of, it's not just the new building, but it's the renovation of the other building that would impact our need for this reserve fund in the next significant number of years.
Correct.
So it's a valley we'd create, but we wouldn't have to refill it for 20, 30 years.
Right, we do it right, you're right, correct.
I want to touch upon revenues just a little bit. Jim brought this up, that we have a reduction in revenues, and that is impacting, the tax rate projection that I shared with you. We have a significant reduction to our non-resident students currently attending. So if you look at line 24, and
Packet page.
12?
packet page 12, thank you.
We're going back to 12.
Yeah. So we budgeted this year for $795 and we only have $697.
Hold on, there's no line.
Cut up?
Do you mean
Page
12?
12, line 24.
Page 12, line 24.
Page 12, line 24.
You got it?
Yep, sorry, thank you.
So this year, you can see the reduction that happened this year. $795 budget, $697 is what we're anticipating for our non-resident students. So that is flowing into next year, obviously, because we budget for new enrollment, but we are budgeting for new enrollment based on past history and what we know today for who's actually enrolled and who we expect to continue. So that number's going down. So that's a significant impact to your tax rate. And then if we go down to the bottom of that page, page 58, where we have the transfer surplus,
Line 58.
line 58,
Okay.
we see the reduction from 999 is what we use this year, and we've got the 695 in there, so there's a little bit of reduction. That 695 is basically the money remaining from last year, surplus over and above what we anticipated and used this year to reduce taxes. So the 695 we have to do something with. We can use it to reduce taxes. We can ask the voters to move it into a reserve fund, but we have to do something with that money. So I've shown it here for now as a reduction in taxes, but that is a decrease from what we used for this year to what we would be using for next year. So that also has an impact to ed spending. Less revenue.
And
Do
that's
you
on packet page 13.
So do you and Randy, I guess, want feedback from us specifically on that? Do you guys feel like you need to vote, and just even with the warrant articles
I think we talk about it at the next board meeting.
Okay,
I think until we can see the final tax rate, or where we think the final tax rate is going to land, which right now I have a projection for you, but remember, we don't have the LTW finalized yet.
okay,
So, once it is, hopefully it will be, you'll see it in January, and, I think that's the time to really make a decision, and which is easy enough for us to do.
okay, because we have this number, but we won't know how it'll affect the actual taxes until we have
Yeah,
that.
you,
Okay,
if,
alright.
what if our LTW goes down from what I'm showing you today, and you're like, no, we don't want the tax rate going up that much, we wanna increase this,
Right.
right, so.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Jeff.
So on this issue, we would make a decision at the next meeting, is what you're suggesting, relative to how much revenue, additional revenue from sources, such as, represents the FY '26 surplus, right?
The FY '25 surplus.
FY '25
Right,
surplus,
moving
right,
into
okay,
FY
FY '25
Right.
surplus that is essentially unexpended and just sitting out there, basically, as a fund balance.
Mhm.
And you're recommending thus far to apply it as a revenue source to reduce the tax rate,
Correct.
reduce education
Education
spending
spending,
essentially.
which will
Right,
reduce the tax
right,
rate,
which
yes.
has an impact on taxes. And we can augment that in a couple different ways.
Mhm.
One is we could vote to apply the anticipated fund balance in FY '26 to it, which is really unknown, but you have an estimate.
Correct.
We can use the estimate, of course, the whole budget's an estimate. Or, which is $200 and some thousand, right?
Mhm.
Or we could look at our tax stabilization reserve fund, which has 3.7,
2.7.
is it 2.7?
2.7,
2.7 million. And transfer some money from there
yes,
to add to this line.
yes.
And we haven't really got to taxes yet, but I think this relates to taxes, obviously, because we're talking about education spending. And I think we're sort of done going through the budgets. I hope you give me a little latitude to talk generally.
Yep.
So, you look at the budget and what you proposed, and I think it is once again, an entirely thoughtful, comprehensive, coherent spending plan. Really well done. And it results in minimal increases in expenditures, modest increases in expenditures. And that's a lot to do with, healthcare, as we said, and inflation and things of that nature, and the contract for the teachers. And so I think it's reasonable as far as the budget goes. But this is the first time this year, it's one of the good things the state has done, to allow us to anticipate what the actual tax rates are going to be. So in the past, we've seen reasonable budgets being put together by the administration and approved. And they were indeed reasonable, but they resulted in substantial tax increases because we were victims, once again, in years past, and this year again, of the common level appraisal. So if you go to your page where you look at taxes and how your estimates come down to actual tax rate increases,
9.
and that's on
Page
page 10. And this is the information I think is extraordinarily helpful, because not only do we have to worry about the budgets we put together, but I think we have to be concerned, very concerned about the impact on the taxpayers, the people who we represent. And it's a balancing act, and it always has been. But if you look at the actual percentage increases, they range from 1.9% in land growth for some reason, to 15.1% in Peru. And in Peru, if you have a $400,000 home, I don't know if there are any $400,000 homes in Peru, but if you had a $400,000 home in Peru, that would be an increase in taxes of over $1,000. And that's significant, I think. And I think we should try to find a way to mitigate that. $400,000 home in Peru, if we approved the budget and those tax estimates come out to prove correct, would be $8,500. And that's a hunk of change. And it ranges from, $400,000 home is different, means different things in different communities, obviously, depending on the assessment. But it ranges from 3,900 to up to 8,500. So, long story short, I think we should try to do something to mitigate the tax increase. And I'm not so sure it should be on the expense side, but I think we have the wherewithal, given the tax stabilization reserve fund and the amount we have in it, to at least reduce the tax rate, the equalized tax rate. Now, that's $200 and some thousand for a penny reduction.
255, 56, I put it in there.
Yeah, 256, that's right.
256, yeah.
Jeff, I'm gonna remind you too, these projected rates, I'm getting my new assessment in April 2026.
Okay.
So this whole thing changes year over year.
Well, but maybe for you,
Well,
but not anybody else.
but we can't, because we can't change taxes from town to town, we're constantly gonna look at some towns that are assessed high and some that are assessed low,
Yeah.
because that will continue to fluctuate.
Well, I'm not sure it's be assessed high, assessed low. Well, CLA does
Right.
impact that, right.
That's exactly what that is, right? It's
right.
whether
We can control our district tax rate.
we can, control district tax rate only.
Well, we can control how much education spending is, which determines the district tax rate.
Right.
And if we can reduce education spending, based on these estimates, by say $768,000, which would be 3 cents on the estimated tax rate for the equalized rate, I think that would be a significant step in the right direction. I think we have the capacity to do that because of the amount of money in the stabilization fund.
Right. Let's
So
look at
that's
this
something I
next.
would,
Yeah.
But
I
we
would-
have the flexibility, but that then puts us again in a position where next year, I mean, we used $1 million, then close to $1 million.
Yeah.
Talking about using 600,000 now, which, so if we bump that up, the problem is we're kind of putting ourselves into a position of needing to use money in future years too, to get a flat.
In future years, where we know that if a bond passes,
Right.
we're already
It's the
looking
same
at
thing the state
tax
did with our
increase.
tax rates.
right,
They
I
threw
understand.
$100 million in and
Oh,
now
I fully
we've
understand that, but we would still have the capacity to put any surplus at the end of FY '27 back into the stabilization fund. And it may be low this year, but it may be low because there was a significant amount of spending in the consulting line that won't take place again.
Correct.
And historically, our surpluses have been higher. And the reason for that is because you have a lot of personnel costs that are plugged in here based on math, the way I used to do it too. It's very logical, but you have vacancies that occur, either you can't fill the position on time, or vacancies occur, and it results in underspending of the budget.
I'm gonna
But
pause.
I just think this is, it's this is the touchy-feely sort of at the end when we, determining what do we do
Right.
with the tax stabilization.
Well,
So I'm gonna
I'm
go
just
back-
throwing it
hold on
out
one
right
second.
now because I thought
Jeff.
I'd do this besides surprising you.
It informs me for next draft.
Yeah.
So in the next draft, do you expect a large amount of change, or will it look pretty similar to this with just a few
All right,
keyed in areas?
So thank you, because that sets me up for the next thing I wanted to make sure we talk about, which is secondary. So remember that secondary enrollment is down. We have a placeholder of new enrollment in there that we can decide to lower. And it probably makes sense to do that. And that's gonna save some money on the ed fund side. The other thing I wanna point out is we still don't have BBA's rate in here. We have a 3% factor. I put in a placeholder just so that it's not a crazy change. But we don't have that rate yet, so we don't know what the final impact to secondary is gonna be. But we do have some control over what that number is because I have a large new enrollment placeholder in there, larger than what it's likely to be. Jim, you asked at the last board meeting for some history on what we budgeted and where we landed, and I will have that for the January meeting. I didn't have time to do it for this meeting. But, so that can help, you guys make a decision on that, and I think these are the conversations we can have at the next meeting. You don't have to
Right.
vote on the piece of paper that I hand you. We can make those adjustments based on looking at the tax rate. Do we wanna pull out of tax stabilization? do we wanna reduce that enrollment number? And hopefully we'll have a better handle on the tax rate at that time.
Right. So there's a good, so it would be safe to say we can anticipate a tax rate with the BBA rate included.
Yep.
And, whatever feels like the right projection for you guys at the moment with students. And at that time, once we have a firm number,
Yeah,
we can go into the.
Oh, yeah, I just thought
We
I'd
can go to that
raise
little
the
further.
issue
Yeah.
because it might surprise folks.
Right. But I wanna digest this first.
Oh, yeah.
John,
What is, LTW's a 2-year average, correct?
well, yes, that's
Vote
part of the
question.
formula, yes.
So is this year compared to last year, what are, the pressure, we have a greater downward pressure this year, correct?
So we did, but we're not, I pointed out, if you look at package page 9 and you look at row F, okay, that's our LTW count, you can see it's not that much lower.
Yes.
And I actually expect it to go up from that number. So, right, there are other factors than just that ADM number, that 2-year average. So yes, is our 2-year average ADM, which is the starting point for that number. And I will also share that whole formula calculation with you for the next draft too, so you can actually see the comparison. I didn't think it was appropriate to do it now because it's not final.
Yeah.
So yes, that starting point is gonna go down, but since it's a 2-year average, you're protected from a big drop in 1 year, right? But we'll expect it to go down again further next year.
Yeah, so I'm worrying about, I'm worried about next year, thinking of our
Exactly.
tax stabilization, are we gonna be in a risky place with that LDM if we have a lower number this year? Are we gonna be in,
So what I'm gonna show you, when I bring this to you next time, part of the formula is, poverty, that's a big part of the formula. We get a big factor for kids under poverty. That went up significantly here last year. It went up again a little this year, which I was surprised at. The other, part of the formula that's driving it up this year is, the small schools factor. So interestingly enough, there is a small schools factor for schools under 100, which obviously we got with Courier and Sunderland, and that's gonna go away next year. There's also a small school factor for schools under 250, which we haven't had before, except for Dorset, but now Floodbrook has joined that mix because of their drop in enrollment. And then next year, if we think about our schools, it's gonna be all 4 of those locations, right? So, what I wanna look at is, if we were under reorg now, what would that look like? What would those factors look like? So that's what I wanna show you is, if we were to pretend we were in next year, if we were to project those numbers out, all other things like poverty being equal, what would it look like? So I will attempt to do that for the January draft as well, because I think that's an excellent point, John. It's important when we think about the use of tax stabilization, what's gonna happen next year.
you're already way ahead of us, all right, thank
Well, I
you.
don't know that I have an answer, because I don't know what the state's gonna do with it when we have new schools. I don't think they know what they're gonna do with that 2-year average, but I will ask them.
thank you. Any other specific or general questions on the budget?
I have a specific question. And one's just a statement, I guess. Sorry. Can you, when we go into, in the principals, can you just, in the last couple of meetings, we've been talking about how we don't want staff to split between schools, and you have an assistant principal split between Manchester and Dorset for next year. I just, we've been saying that we don't wanna do that. So, are you
There,
thinking behind that?
yeah, I mean, it's the overall staffing configurations and needs.
Yeah.
We're defining the role of the assistant principal within the buildings, and the principals of those schools will be deciding what that specific work is.
Okay.
We've made a lot of organizational changes around leadership to respond to the changes we're making. There is not full-time assistant principal work at either of those buildings, but they need assistant principal support.
Okay.
If I kept a full-time person at those schools, it would be an overstaffing situation. We've tried a few things. having an assistant principal at MEMS that oversees special education has not worked well, so we're moving away from that model. We can do that with the changes down here. With the changes down in the valley because of the specialized programs and really re-looking at the big picture of how we are providing leadership to special education. But the middle school, the majority of our discipline referrals come from our middle school students. So the discipline, social emotional side of that work, which is what is most likely going to go to assistant principal, is not going to be enough for a full-time position. Each of the 3 schools down in the valley and up here, all 4 of our schools will have a really well-staffed social emotional team with a school counselor, either a clinician or social worker, and a behaviorist. So we'll be really building a strong tiered system of support for services, also things that we haven't been able to do that we've required the AP for. So just after really analyzing everything, it's the appropriate staffing for the schools as they are now.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. Sue, thank you very much, and Randy, for this work on this budget.
You're welcome.
I personally, and I think probably a lot of people here really appreciate you dividing out pre-org and post-org. That was nicely done, and helps paint a picture.
Yep.
I think that we're gonna need to communicate to our communities, and what that really looks like, so, and I know that means you've made 2 budgets.
That's
So,
okay.
So that
It was
hasn't
important.
escaped any of us, so thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah, I just wanna really thank Sue. This has been a tremendous lift, incredibly complicated, cognitively exhausting and confusing process. And she's done exceptional work, so thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
It's a lot, thank you.
Thank you, Sue. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to governance process. Do you wanna go home and go to sleep now? Governance process, we have a recommendation from Randy for policy governance board training.
Okay.
Yes?
It is in there.
And I have that as an action item, so I think you're looking for us to approve that. It seems straightforward to me. Are there any questions, I guess, from the board regarding the dates, times, or specifically what?
It's on
I'm looking at
page
package,
26.
yeah, sorry, packet page 26.
Do you need a motion to begin with?
I think I need a motion to begin with.
So I move that we approve the Action Policy Governance Board training proposal submitted by Randy.
Second?
Dick? Discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the policy board training proposal, please indicate by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And passes. Thank you. Jim, would you like to give us a legislative and VSBA update? Or-
Yeah, tricky right now, but we did have not everybody, we had a lot of board members attend yesterday, a meeting with the legislators. We had pretty good attendance from the legislators as well. It was a good discussion scheduled for about an hour and a half, went a little bit beyond that. I think we did most of the talking, but, it was interactive session. For those that weren't there, we kind of defined some key points we wanted to cover during the meeting, and so we really tried. I think we had a lot of participation from a lot of board members, providing the input, and I think the message that we got across, whether it actually got across or not, is always hard to tell, but, I think they were engaged. And some of the points we tried to be pretty clear on. was one, our belief that things actually do need to change, and that Act 73, the basic, the intent of Act 73, we are fully supportive of, and we do, we're not a district that believes that, we should put our head in the sand and, not have any change. We want to see change, but we want to see change that makes sense. On that front, I think we reiterated the fact that maps and massive districts are not the solution to, achieving the goals that Act 73 is looking for, improving the quality of education at a more sustainable cost trajectory. We were really, pushed pretty hard on the fact that, we've been sort of coming around more and more to trying to propose that actually what we need are policy changes to be defined at the state level. They have to be smart policy changes, and by policy we're talking about things like, in Act 73 there was the minimum class size, restrictions. We're kind of trying to present it as we need policy changes. One of the things we pointed out, this board, TNG and BRSU, are an example of what can be done when a board tries to do the right thing and focuses on improving the quality of education for our kids and getting us on a bit more sustainable trajectory financially. So we, doing the difficult things with our communities and making the tough decisions to try to move things forward, we'd say we embody what Act 73 is about. And our impression that most school districts are extremely well intentioned out there, but at the same time they don't have the will or the capacity, or they have a tendency to want to maintain where things are, with often schools that aren't necessarily going to be able to provide the education their kids deserve, and with costs getting out of control. So we're trying to say things like policies like the minimum school size or minimum class size, and and potentially trying to define other policies that can be used as guardrails and direction for school boards and school districts to be essentially forced to make the smart decisions. It's really, tried to make it clear that it's really complicated because, when Act 73 also had policies like minimum school district size of 4,000, 8,000, which we actually brought up and said was insane, but, because it doesn't work in, a lot of areas of the state. But we do need, our proposal was trying to get them behind the idea of approaching, trying to, instead of the top down, now all of southwestern Vermont will be one SU. It's try to create a situation where school boards are forced to change the way they operate to benefit their kids and the taxpayers. I think that went over reasonably well. We also brought up the fact that, or the suggestion that, we made it clear that one of our biggest issues, due to the nature of our education system, is the ability to continue to work as a school district that educates our kids through a combination of public and independent schools. And that we need to, get the issue of which, Randy's been pointing out for us in recent times, there really are two separate issues of school choice and then using public funds for paying independent schools. They get put together and they're kind of tough to pull apart, but we think that, what we're proposing is, instead of, what a lot of Act 73, a lot of people in the legislature have thought that, oh, governance can fix that problem. we're suggesting that, again, policy is a more appropriate way to define how the state should work from that standpoint, than governance. So that, those are, anybody else who wants to hop in, I think, those were points that, I think got across pretty clearly. We had a few of our legislators who still are, understandably, are still kind of thinking maps, because that's what they've been talking the whole time. But I thought, honestly, all of our legislators, they engaged and they had good comments and good questions and stuff like that. Yeah.
Is anyone talking about Carson anymore? And
The-
is Carson, so we've got, just looking at who we tuition to, and maybe there's more schools I'm missing, Christian Brothers Academy, Grace Christian, Mount St. Joseph's.
No, we're not talking about Carson at all.
And so is Act 73, but I think it was designed in part to solve some of the Carson problem with the 25%.
We don't want to say that, because that would mean that they were trying to do something wrong. They were trying to do it. In reality, as a side effect, it happened to have.
People are grandfathered in.
But are we, in next year or the year, whenever things kick in with 73, will we still be sending kids
No.
to Christian Brothers Academy?
They're
Grace Christian?
they're grandfathered now.
Those
So
kids.
as
Yeah.
of July 1st, anybody that was enrolled is grandfathered and no,
Yeah.
I know the
I
students
ran
are, but I'm
some-
saying
I ran
for
some-
new
just to kind of-
students.
There's
So-
nothing.
so
Just
who-
I looked at the numbers, and we were sending tuition to about, like 50 schools. That's going to decline to
So
like
what are
a
the
half a
schools
dozen.
from the list that are gonna stay on that list according to their, based
The
on?
only ones that can be are the 18.
Yeah, so
And
everybody
new
that's on that
students
list of
can
18
enroll in.
will stay on that list of 18.
For
And
for the students that are currently enrolled?
for the foreseeable future, unless policy
They'll roll
changes
off.
or until we are put in districts and no longer have a non-operating district. So as long as there's still independent access, access to independent schools and private schools, within those 18 schools, there will be no change. Nobody's talking about Carson coming in. They're not talking about dropping any of those. So the only way that any of that
So-
would change was if we were to say, be merged into larger districts, and then everybody is assigned a school, and there is no school choice or non-operating districts.
All right,
That's the only
confused.
thing that would
Okay.
shut that
So,
down.
so I guess kids graduate from Grace Christian,
correct.
they're still on the list.
Mhm.
No,
Okay.
you're saying yes, they're
Okay,
saying
yeah.
no.
You're saying no?
Can you just,
Yeah.
okay.
Just
In
calm
that
down.
list you got, the list that's in your packet represents the schools that Taconic and Green 9th through 12th graders are enrolled in right now.
In the budget,
In the budget,
that's what you
In
mean,
the
yes,
budget.
okay.
Page 23, is
Right,
that what we're
okay.
talking about?
Probably,
So-
I don't know the exact page.
It's the tuition page,
So,
Somewhere. Secondary tuition.
23.
yes,
Yes,
so
yes, secondary.
you have right now 4 years. Any student that was enrolled in a school outside of the 18 that are approved, if they were enrolled as of July 1st of 2025, they are allowed to continue. So the longest time that you will see any schools on this list, other than the 18, is 4 years.
Right.
Unless things change.
Unless things change.
As things are right now in Act 73. So you will every year likely start seeing
Right.
students drop off, schools drop off. So the maximum time that you're gonna see these is 4 years, as Act 73 is now.
And the 18, list of 18 was determined by that 25%
Yeah.
Correct.
circuit breaker, remember?
And then for a Win Hall, the 50 number I had for schools includes like, well, the Win Hall schools and stuff. Win Hall's gonna be,
So-
cut down
Yeah,
as well. who
and
they
so I
can send
think,
it to.
just to even put a finer point on this, that entire list of tuition out of state will be gone within 4 years. Every year, for the next 4 years, you're gonna see that get smaller. 4 years, that whole out of state will be gone. When you look at the independent in-state, the only schools that will remain on this list are in those 18. Compass is closed, so you won't see them after this year. Yeah,
Thank you.
does that help?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Thanks, Alex.
Okay, Jim, a quick question. Sorry, I didn't make it another meeting, but was there any discussion about the foundation formula?
Yes.
Pros, cons, and viability of it?
Yeah,
Yes.
that was actually, Randy did a good job starting off with saying, the foundation formula's there and it's got problems.
Right.
And we reiterated the fact, we were asked the question, can you, explain one of the problems? And, very specifically noted the issue that, there's probably double counting with respect to grant funds. And
Poverty.
that's very significant that, we tried to give them a sampling anyway. So
They
the-
want
the-
to hear more.
What's that?
They
Go
want to
ahead.
hear more. They understand.
They do wanna hear more, they seem to, they did seem to accept the fact that, and we said, we don't have a problem with a foundation formula that's a good, functioning, reasonable foundation formula. And we also, tried to make the point that, the fact that they came up with a foundation formula and then modeled it around the state would have been a great opportunity to, one, figure out what's wrong with it, and also figure out what do you learn from the fact that some districts are supposed to get 20% less money and some are supposed to get 20% more money. What can you learn? Because honestly, when you look at, when we were, trying to suggest that policies be determined to figure out, to give school boards those guardrails and how they need to operate, the foundation formula and how it applies would have been a wonderful way to create some, good guidelines.
Thank you. Gonna be quite a year.
We did, and additionally, as mentioned earlier, on healthcare costs, I've been pleased because, being with VSBA and stuff like that, I talked to Seth once, we had a long chat, and he wants to talk again about, specifically what needs to change in order to get the statewide healthcare negotiations with the teachers, in a better place so that we, we don't just get trumped. And, he seems very willing, and I've heard from a few other legislators there is interest in doing that. The VSBA is definitely all over. The VSBA has actually hired consulting sort of help for the employer commissioners. The board approved, spending money to have pros come in and try to help push that case.
Okay. Work plan, which is just a distribution item. I'm assuming next month that will include the policy governance board training. That's not quite on there yet, that we just approved tonight. Future agenda items.
Could we?
I know I should have done that before, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead. I thought you're not.
Could we add a brief agenda item to discuss board member attendance and possibly creating a policy? And I'll leave it at that.
Okay. I looked for a policy on that and I didn't see one.
Yeah, but maybe we should,
There isn't one,
because
right?
I think, I know it's a volunteer position, but we're representing.
Yep.
And I think it's important, okay.
Lindsay, do you wanna go ahead?
I think we've discussed this because I brought it up before about student on the board, and I can't remember, but it was a couple of meetings ago where I brought it up, and I think the board discussed that because we're adults, we did not want something written for accountability, but I'm just wondering if, you know,
You brought it
maybe
up in March, so it was the beginning
Okay.
of, and I think maybe at this point we do.
yeah,
sure,
I
but-
agree.
Check with
I'm not
these.
sure the board can actually do anything
Right.
about it if somebody never attends, because it's an elected position.
Dick, do you wanna comment on that?
The procedure at this point, when we've had issues of non-attendance that come repeatedly was that the chair or a representative of the chair goes out and tries to find out what might be the problem and tries to find ways of emphasizing that you are representing people and your presence is important because every board member's ability to weigh in on issues adds to the collective will and of anybody of the group. And so we said adults occasionally have reasons why they can't come, and after about 2 or 3, the chair almost always tries to find out what's going on. And you're correct in the sense that we spent some time talking about the fact that we are adults.
It would be nice if we know people are not here for a reason to share that out, so that.
At the beginning of the
just
meeting?
At the beginning of the meeting, that might be a nice thing to do. If
Right, I
people
know, like
communicate with you.
Jessica did indicate she wasn't gonna make it, Alex, and I regularly get communications from some people,
Yeah.
but not from
But
all.
I think
Yeah.
it's important because the community isn't aware, and when people walk out of meetings and especially after an important vote, it looks poorly on the board and people have questions and nobody has answers. So
And that's what I was saying, like, if we can communicate with the chair, and
Yeah,
the
I think
chair
it's really
communicate
important.
out,
Mhm.
if you know what's going on,
Yeah,
just put that out there at the beginning of the meeting or the end of the meeting or whatever, and that help.
yeah, I know, I'm actually I'm sitting on that, cause there are people that tell me sometimes they can't go, I know in the case of Ron, he works third shift, so he indicated that at the beginning, when he ran, that there were gonna be evening times that he couldn't make it, but, so I guess so does that need to go in policy, right, or at the beginning of the meeting, I just say who's communicated that they won't make it and just leave it at that? Does that seem reasonable? Or
But I think when you're missing more
Yeah.
meetings than showing up, and like we have the meeting dates out a year ahead, I mean, it's challenging for everybody to get here.
Mhm.
I have to get a babysitter every single time. I'm baffled. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
That doesn't mean we couldn't put it on the agenda if the
Sure.
rest of the board would like to have further discussion.
Do we wanna put that, I mean, it's time for future agenda items, Kelsey, do you want me to put that in?
I'd appreciate it.
I know, I'm feeling a little, it's a little difficult, but Kelsey's, it has come up for over a year. That's been coming up for a while.
It could be a
and-
process,
Uh-huh,
you know, an absentee process.
right.
That
And-
board members agree to.
This might actually be really nice.
Oh, we still have
We
some
have
big
a
things
new,
coming
we'll
up,
we'll
so
have
I
a new
just-
board coming in March.
Yeah.
Right, and we'll be having policy governance training. Maybe what I can recommend is, let's go ahead and, I don't know, I'll talk at the agenda planning committee meeting and see if there's something we want to add specifically, but otherwise I'm gonna say maybe March is, during that orientation time, we figure that out. Or whoever orients everyone else. Can think about maybe just that as being
But
part
it
of
might
the
be a good
discussion, 'cause
idea
I
to
don't
talk
know.
about it briefly beforehand.
Sure.
So then, like, there is a policy or there's some discussion
Procedure.
in place by March or April, because it takes a long time to do things.
Who would put that
Stated
procedure in place?
expectations.
Okay, or we can add that to board norms even. Does the policy committee feel like they wanna dive into this, or do we wanna take this as a whole
Since we're
board
not
next
meeting
meeting?
until after the first of the year, then
Yeah,
we're
What-
meeting in the next meeting on the 6th.
Why don't you come up with a thought that you can add to the next agenda, we'll put it on the agenda, and if you have a suggestion, bring it to us for discussion.
A lot of
Yeah,
organizations have,
we're fine.
like the VSBA has, VSBA board, because its nature, they actually have a sort of part of their bylaws or, expectations of board members, I can give you something like that.
Yeah, we'll talk,
Let's
get
set
that,
it,
and
yeah.
then I'll send you some stuff. I'll
Yeah.
send you my thoughts.
Okay, sounds good. Go ahead. Jeff.
Agenda item,
Yeah.
I just wonder if it'd be possible to put on an agenda item, executive session litigation update.
Second.
For the future agenda.
Yeah, the
Yep,
next
okay.
agenda would be great.
Next agenda, Board updates.
Litigation.
Yes, go ahead.
I just would like to put on the next agenda, we're developing sort of a renaming process for schools in the valley, and I would like to seek some input from the board of what a proposal is, just for input from at the next meeting.
As in like
The
new
valley?
names or just have an
That's what I wanted.
approach or?
Not up here though, right?
Well, right, I mean, the proposal will include everything, but it's not gonna include renaming here, but
So
Just sort of the-
floodbook and state flood road.
I'm not gonna recommend it changes,
Right.
but maybe your input is that it should.
No.
That's.
Don't say
So
that.
I'm just saying, like, I'm gonna talk to you about Taconic and
Yeah, I
Green in
understand. I just
general,
wanted to be clear.
and I'm not gonna exclude anybody, but I would like your input on process and thoughts,
Righto.
okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Board self-evaluation is in your packet. If you do not have it by paper, please fill it out online. It's been shared with you. If you need a new email, I will send you one, or just search in your email for one from me. Our next meeting date is January 6th, 6:30 at the Courier School, and
When is it?
January 6th I have on here,
Maybe it is. Is that
Yeah.
Yeah.
which makes me wonder, when is our,
It's 6.
when are we doing our
December
agenda?
29th.
Okay,
I checked on that
I have that in
today.
my
What,
mind.
December 31st, you are?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's 7 o'clock.
Oh, no, okay.
Public
Oh, yeah,
comment.
public comment.
Great.
Good point.
I think
Oh, I did miss public comment, I have
Public
notes all over the place, I totally can't see it, sorry. Before we adjourn, 10 minutes for public comment, if anybody in the, yes, go ahead. Could you state your name, I'm sorry.
Christine Flenda,
Okay, thank you.
Western Vermont. So one is, why is the number so different, the projected number versus the actual number this year? And how did we lose that many students? And where did they go?
Can you be specific, do you mean in
Yeah,
the
it's
school
like a
specifically, or?
It was like 100 off.
Long-term weighted.
Oh, the long-term weighted count? That was only a couple changes. Which number are we talking about? Are you talking about the non-resident students? Is that the number cause that was, 500,000.
There's secondary.
You're saying it was like
Secondary.
750 something that went down to 600.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
you're talking about the non-resident the revenue, right? Yeah, I mean,
revenue.
so we don't generally look at it on a student-by-student basis to find out where did they move to, why did they leave.
But they're not our
They're not our
students.
kids.
So
right.
they're students from other districts who tuition in to attend our schools.
Like Win
So
Hall.
they're just not here.
Understood.
So the towns they come from have choice, and they're choosing to go to one of our schools, and not as many of them chose to come here or decided to go somewhere else or moved out of state. And I think if you think about the declining enrollment that we're seeing across the board, not only at our schools, but at the secondary program as well, it does make sense to see a decline in enrollment there as well.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess I'm in my head, I don't know, I'm not understanding that many kids that we would have thought were coming.
Is
So,
it the dollar
So it was
amount?
42 we budgeted
Right.
for, we got 39 last, for this year,
oh,
and next year we're guessing 33.
So this is on packet page 25, there's a list of all the students that attend our schools, not just Floodbrook, but Dorset and Manchester as well, they tuition it. So
Okay.
it lists out the number of students that we anticipated coming for this year, so we budgeted for them. Then how many actually came, and then who are we budgeting for next year?
Can you give me those two numbers?
So there were
Actually-
42 students. We're talking about the
Interestingly-
$795 versus the $697, that's the cost.
That was the money.
So the revenue that we would
Understood.
take
Okay.
in for
Thank
those
you.
42
But
students.
one of the biggest drops
Thank
was
you.
Winhall.
Right, and Winhall went from 21 to 22, and then next year going down to 15, and so those are those 8th graders leaving,
And
right?
their overall enrollment in the district is down.
Sorry, I thought that was
It's a-
so
Number of
numbers,
students.
not dollars.
Gotcha.
Okay, my, second thing is, I'm very surprised that that there was not more conversation about preschool here at Floodbrook. And, my understanding is that the two main private schools have had communication to them, but are they full this year? Are they on a waiting list? How is that need anticipated? That there is a need, because in the past, we haven't looked at that because we don't want to hurt those businesses.
Right, did you, so we talked about that earlier. So the analysis that our early ed director did with the region up here was that there is an unmet need. So the information that we collected indicated the timing is potentially good to open up a program because there's an unmet need. At the end of the day, the state is going to do their analysis and either approve it or not. And that will be contingent in part on available space.
When will they move that?
Yeah, we're not
don't know.
sure,
Okay.
right? The timing of their process, we don't have any control over that.
I live in Londonderry, and I try to talk to as many people in town as I can. And over the years I've been on the board, one of the things that has happened is that the regulations for daycare opportunities for that aged child have increased in terms of safety regulations, training, all the rest of it. The costs of the daycare possibilities, both offered by individuals but also by formal schools around, are a factor increasingly on the need for daycare possibilities of the 3- and 4-year-old set. And so when I said during the discussion, there's always been a need, and it is a real hardship that if you're in the grocery store and it comes up, a crowd gathers around you.
Thank you. Any more public comment?
I just have one more thing.
Sure.
It's my understanding that your positions are not volunteer. Maybe I have that wrong, but
There is a stipend, there's
That's
a pay,
right.
yep.
thank you.
It's a small stipend. I can tell you when I ran for this, I wasn't even aware that there was a stipend.
My point is
but-
that it is not a volunteer position. Thank you.
Okay.
Looking for one more motion.
Move for adjournment.
Thank you, Dick.
Adjournment.
And a second?
I'll second.
I'll
I'll
second.
second, I'll second.
No,
Okay.
no one wants to stay.
We want to stay, I guess.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Okay.
David,
Say aye, aye.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, aye.
Did you see that?
Alex,
proposed,
Alex says yes, Lindsay says like yes.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, folks.
That's like-